just managed to get the live stream started, so anything now is going to be recorded. Since it didn't seem like there was an objection.
Hello,
So
future generations, for the leaders of Gen Alpha who are watching this for
I was thinking
inspiration in the year
Generation Charlie.
2035. Greetings.
Wow.
yeah, who knows? I mean, like this is, as far as I know, one of the first public streams of something connected to this thing, whatever we're calling it, even if we don't have a name for it. So, um, welcome to the pilot of the Cultivation Circle. Um, Jacob, do you want to say any few words about the circle? Or are we just going to do the show part and we'll tell later?
Yeah, I'll just drop like one line, basically the purpose of this group is to, you know, we're called the Cultivation Circle because all of us feel some degree of calling, or some of the people that are actually joining and doing all this stuff, whatever, feel some degree of calling to actually cultivate learnings from just the different people in this just random amalgamation of people and just the group that we're all kind of a part of. So we're just trying to figure out what we can learn and help other people learn the things that everyone else has learned. Just kind of be a central melting pot for what we've learned as a group and organization.
Right, and I think probably also forgot to tell you that we do communion as part of this, and we'll actually start with that. So if you need to take a moment and go grab something, um, yeah,
Way ahead of
and
you, Ernie. I know to prepare anytime I see you on a call.
you're the man. Yeah.
I should be.
Uh,
I think I just saw Sarah snacking on her communion crackers.
We got our berries and our tea.
Oh
yeah,
my
dual
God.
use.
Communion berries. That's next
Yeah.
Berries
level.
and tea. That feels like a hippie communion there.
Well, I was cracking myself up at the October event when they asked me to go get some communion stuff, so I got goldfish, and
Hmm.
I thought I was very funny. I think I walked in and Joel gave me a that like
Well, I think
what?
we were gonna get some actually like wine and wafers, and he thought that was too formal. He wanted like M&Ms or you know, you know, diet Dr. Pepper or something to be less sacramental.
Yeah, but I thought the goldfish was top tier.
Yeah, yeah. The problem with if I have goldfish around is that the kids eat it, and then I have nothing left for communion. So I have to like sequester the stuff that I'm using so they don't run out.
The fish swim away. I get that.
Get the non-cheesy ones, just like the normal like saltine cracker goldfish, because kids are like, why? Why
Oh,
would
I didn't even know that those existed.
Yeah, man. They're blue. It's a blue package. They're
They're
Oh,
actually
blue.
I know what you're
one,
talking about.
above the age of 20 23. So I think that,
Yeah, the lightly salted ones.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why they're lightly salted ever.
me neither. I'm trying to get, type 1 out here whenever I eat goldfish.
It's a crazy thing to say.
All right. And so actually I'll go ahead and share the agendas so you all know what we're following here. Um, the first part of the agenda is what I call end communication, is that the idea is that this whole meeting takes place inside of a communion. We start with the breaking of the bread and we end with the drinking of the cup. And the whole point is that Jesus is the host of this meeting. And so right after we take communion, we'll go into a place and just listen to Jesus, like, hey, we have some things we'd like to talk about. What do you want to talk about? What do you want us to know? What do you want us to do? And we just take time and listen to Jesus. And if all we do is sit there and listen to Jesus, that's a good use of an hour. If he says something and then we share it and act on it, so much the better. And um, but that's what we'll start with now. I think most of you have done communion with me online, so I'll just acknowledge, Christ, that we are coming to you as the different pieces of your body, trusting that if we give you our attention and focus on you, that you will be in our midst and you will give us everything we need. And everything that needs to be accomplished will be accomplished because it's with you.
Mm.
Jacob, the body of Christ broken for you.
Phil, the body of Christ broken for you.
Jonathan, the body of Christ broken for you.
Steve, the body of Christ broken for you.
Sarah, the body of Christ broken for you.
Ernie, the body of Christ broken for you.
I can eat. So I encourage you to just mute your microphone and just ask Jesus what he wants us to know and what he wants us to do. And when you're ready, unmute.
All right, sweet.
All right. All right. I will pitch to, we do this as a pitch format as I just pitch to someone and then they pitch it around and we see where we end up. Ideally, I go last so we don't break the chain. Steve, you want to go first? I pitch to you.
Sure. Thank you for that, Ernie. Happy to respond to your question. Um,
Is that
well,
a
I'm always attracted to scripture. So Psalm 104, verse 5 says, You, speaking of God, you who laid the foundations of the earth. And that's pretty fundamental, pretty foundational. Here is God, the creator, laying down the foundations of the earth. And within this ecosystem that we're working on within this group, there is a component, or I believe an element of this that is related to foundations. That some of the things that we are producing is foundational to the ecosystem. Over to you, Jacob.
All right. Yeah. I had a very simple word. Felt like God just wants us to, or I'll just say what I felt like God said. Felt like God said, I want you to discuss what it means to grow the group and make space for Jonathan, Sarah, and Phil to have the floor. I'm going to pitch over to Jonathan with that being said.
Um, okay, so in response to what do you want me or us to know, I felt like he said, don't overthink or over structuralize this. And in response to what do you want us to do, I felt like he said, bask in friendship. I now hereby pitch the authority and responsibility to Phil.
The authority and the responsibility to speak next.
Sure. Or whatever you feel called to contribute.
So he I guess maybe answered both questions as one question, or maybe he just answered the second question. I'll let you guys decide. But he said the word family to me, and I felt like he said this phrase, or it gave me a feeling that I'm putting into the English language with this phrase. I'm wanting you to take note of what is happening in your home. And specifically, what's happening in my home right now is, and it's in a lot of ways in me, but he's talking to me about it in my home, and I'm taking steps towards it being in my home, which involves Joel's hearing God teaching, the TL teaching from Ford Taylor, and my story process that are actually, I'm beginning to see them all connected together and them being applied in my home context as a expression of the ecosystem. And that's kind of been a theme that he's talked to me about, is family, and doing this with family, with kids. Yes, TL meaning transformational leadership. So yeah, I could talk more about it, but that's what he said to me. And I do have something to say in response to Jacob's sense that if you give me the floor, I have something to say at some point about this circle. I don't know if this is the moment or if I should pitch it to someone else.
We'll swing back to you.
Sweet. I'm going to pitch it to Sarah.
So in response to what does he want me to know? He just said, it's good for you to be here. And then I asked, what's your agenda? Which was a little weird because I'm like, this is my first time here. I have no idea what's been going on. And he asked, what is the group doing at the June gathering? And what are they cultivating that is supposed to be brought to the June gathering? And then I will pass it on to Ernie. Oh, you're muted.
What I heard God say was, I love these people. Like these people specifically. I love them. And he says, they always want to put me first. And I heard him say, thank you, Ernie, for creating a context where I get to be first. And what it is Jesus saying, I'm first, so you should go last and listen. So that ends this phase, and now it's just sort of where the Spirit leads next.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, Phil, you said that, if given the floor, you had something to talk about. What you got, Phil? And you're muted.
Always makes me feel good when the tech expert tries to talk on mute. It makes me feel better about all the times I've talked on mute.
It's true.
I appreciate you. Yeah, so I was at the gathering last June in Dallas, and the Lord highlighted to me when Joel was doing his wonderful slideshow that we all love and appreciate. When he mentioned the standardization circle, there was something in my spirit that was like, that is something that I need to be a part of, and that's something that I need to do. And I felt a clear from the spirit draw to it. And I think I didn't fully understand if it even existed slash what the timing was on it, but I have found myself looking backwards, operating like I'm in that circle and thinking like I'm in that circle. And this is something that I've become aware of as the year has gone on, but more recently in the last couple of weeks, talking with Joel and reflecting on some of the things that I've done with him over the last 2 years and the way I operate. I've seen myself more as a communication person, but I think I'm realizing that I'm more a standardization person than a communication. And because of the relationship of the two, I find myself engaging in communication, and there's not always a lot of space for standardization in other contexts, outside of ecosystem. And so anyway, I also processed with Joel the fact that I felt like maybe that this wasn't the Holy Spirit telling me this, but maybe myself trying to apply the rules that I heard Joel talk about, that you can only be in so many circles. And that kind of kept me from engaging with this. And that's also maybe a bit of a question of how much time I have to commit. Both of those questions being more in my internal, does this make sense thinking versus the Holy Spirit leading me. And I think as I've reflected more on this opportunity in this circle, I'm beginning to realize that even some of my thoughts about hearing God, about identity, really in a lot of ways come back to the way that I'm operating is actually drawing things out of people and trying to turn them into standard practices or standard approaches to things. And I haven't seen it so much through that lens. I've seen it more through the lens of writing, and I've even started to see the story process as I've started to write a book that the Lord's told me to write out of that process. I've started to realize that I understand and see and have experienced all of the elements of the story process, and I can take people through all of them, but I actually own a small part of it. And that the story process is really a lens by which you look at a journey, a human journey, that you could look at as the human journey into the ecosystem or a human's development as a disciple. And as I've looked at it that way, I've started to realize that I own a small part of that process. And then I started to think maybe that the whole process itself is really just a map or a viewpoint by which you can see and relate to other people and what they carry in this process. And all of that has led me to think that maybe my interest in identity, my interest in communication, my interest in discipleship, that's all led to the story process, is really, I think, on some level, me functioning like a standardization, or I use the word standardization because it makes more sense to me. I think of it as tools and context. I don't know if I have the words fully formed for that yet, but anyway, it's all that adds up to, I feel very much like I'm supposed to be here, and I'm excited to join this circle and contribute to the circle. And I'm excited about it because I think this is, like, even Joel, he's here staying with me this week at my house, and he and I are on calls a lot together. And I think I've realized talking to him that he intuitively, probably because of his strength in hearing God and his relational dynamic approach to things, he intuitively does things right in the ecosystem. And I intuitively reflect on what he's doing and why he's doing it. And I ask him questions. And so our friendship has functioned like him doing stuff and me trying to standardize it and understand it. And when I reflect on the 2-3 years I've known him, my relationship with him and what's come out of it makes a lot more sense through that lens. So anyway, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about as I jump onto this call. And I think I'm still in the bit of a process on figuring out, even writing a book, there's the whole like taco party analogy, it's like, okay, clearly someone who's not me understands what's happening here and is orchestrating it and bringing together different ingredients, and responding to him is the right move, and I am, and he's telling me to do stay and go and the story process and all these elements. But thinking about, well, what are those elements and how they relate to the others, I've begun to understand that I won't fully understand that until the others appear, and I'm starting to see what some of the others are and how I relate to them. And so anyway, I'm in a like a curious, reflective state right now, and am actively, in response to the Holy Spirit, trying to sort out how to correctly bring my contribution, that it would be all that he's given me to contribute and not more, and how to relate it in such a way that it encourages and invites the contributions of others and connects with the contributions of others. And so anyway, that's a little bit of, I could pull up the story process map at some point and share kind of some of my thoughts on it to go in more detail of what I mean by all this, but I think that's enough for now.
Yeah. I like that. A couple key points to comment on that is you and Jonathan have a similar skill set, and something that you just expressed. And I think it's a really key skill set because I think everyone here has that skill set. Y'all exemplify it in a lot of ways, but it's the why question, right? Okay, well, why'd that work that way? Why did when we did it this way, why'd that not work? Why'd it work when you did it that way? Why did why did it work in the context that it worked in is a key question. And that's something that me, Ernie, and Steve talk in different terms around, but in a very similar way of like, okay, well, this seems to be confusing to people. So why is that confusing? Okay, well, it's confusing because we're stating it in this really like bubble way, right? Where it's just like really hard for people to, yeah, reflective is a perfect word for it, right? Very reflective people. And I see that in every single person on this call, whether it's Ernie, Steve, Jonathan, Sarah, or Phil. All of us are, I'd say, considerably like being reflective is a skill set that all of us do a pretty good job with. And then also just the how much time to commit question, I think is a really real one. And that's one that we're kind of exploring. In my head, we spend a little bit extra time in the beginning getting some stuff figured out. And that's how it's kind of played out for me, Ernie, and Steve so far is I don't really think we're supposed to be spending, 5 to 10 hours a month on this going forward. I think it should be 5 or less hours in the future. And that's including meetings and work, you know. Um, so just throw those pieces out there. That's the type of rhythms that I've kind of talked to Joel about a little bit, and that feels about right. But when you're first starting something up, it's a little bit more time consuming. But also, it doesn't have to be time consuming past that for you, right? For any individual person. It's all based off what you think is right and what you think God is telling you to do, right? So, that was just some of the things I was feeling for you, Phil. Anyone else want to jump in? Or Phil, do you want to respond?
Jonathan, were you going to say something?
I wasn't sure whether Phil wanted to respond. I want to give him a shot to respond.
I feel good about that.
Heck yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so Phil and I are both a part of the communication circle, and I would ditto a lot of the things that he said about even how he's kind of framed what the Lord has focused him on. For me, the Lord's said a lot about kind of the meta narrative that he's putting together and story. And as I asked God and different people who are a part of the bigger group where that would fit, a lot of people said the communication circle. But I would totally concur with Phil and reaffirm what Jacob was saying about myself, that a lot of how I kind of naturally think and operate is reflective in a way that's trying to standardize things and cultivate foundations. In fact, when Steve and I were talking about kind of the nature of what an apostle is, which has kind of been an ongoing conversation I've been having with different people, including several of you on this call. He showed me Ephesians 2, where it's talking about how the foundations are built on the apostles and prophets. So in addition to that, I think even more than the communication circle, I love the communication circle people and everybody who's a part of that group, but within the ecosystem, I would say I've had, especially for those of you who aren't my best friend or my wife, I've had a moment where there's been just kind of a special interaction where I've wondered, like, Lord, are we supposed to do something together? Like, where, like, there's this resonance that's like, huh, that seems unique, even amongst all these special people and special friendships. Like, what is that for? And so the fact that everybody on this call, and for Jacob and Sarah, for both of you, it's like I'm already kind of oriented to you because you're both such special people in my life. And Phil and I have talked about this kind of idea more in depth recently, but yeah, I don't know. I've seen something, a glimmer of something that I think will kind of manifest more going forward. And there's something that makes sense that, like, to me, at least, in terms of the question in the ecosystem of, like, what are you supposed to be doing according to what God's told you to do and who you are? Who are you supposed to do it with? Like, for the communication circle, the answer to that question is more aligned with, like, the function of the communication circle. In the case of the cultivation circle here, I feel like it's both the function of the cultivation circle according to who I am and the skill set that I have, but also, like, you guys, specifically these people. It makes sense that this group and you guys would be people that the Lord would have me kind of running alongside and really being intentional in relationship with. So that's what I would say.
Come on.
Can I offer one more thought that helped me on this? So I was talking recently with Joel, and he was discussing this he said it would make more sense if I was in the design circle for the national ecosystem. He's talked about this stage of the ecosystem development as a baby and in the womb with an umbilical cord. And for whatever reason, when he was talking, I thought of it as a placenta, which the umbilical cord connects with the placenta. But what I realized was that in the early stages of development of a baby, that you need the placenta to do a lot of things that the baby's eventually going to be able to do for itself, but it can't yet. And it needs those things to function really well. And the placenta essentially operates like an organ, like multiple organs for the baby. And that in that stage of development, that's right for the baby to not be able to do those things itself. And this was a part of what led me to say, oh, we can be a part of what Joel's response was. You can be a part of more circles than 3 right now, because I think we're in a implementation or a apostolic or early adopter, whatever you want to call it, developmental stage. And it just connected with me, that reality, even around the connections between communication and cultivation, and how many of us are in many places overlapping, and that there's a formation period right now that maybe not the way it's meant to function eventually, but is the way it needs to function to get there. And I actually think of that almost as a cultivation type way of approaching this. And so there's an element of thinking about what we're doing right now, even the Lord bringing us to a place and having grace in our lives to be able to engage on this level. Because it's not just a question of, do you understand the ecosystem? It's a question of whether or not you're healthy enough to participate in it in a meaningful, consistent, healthy way. And so I feel the grace of the Lord and the leadership of the Lord that's brought each of us to this point at this time. And there's a grace on us that's not even earned. It's just something he's given us to be able to function in a way that helps bring formation and bring, up the right relationships and the right interactions that lead us to the right lessons, that lead us to form some key elements that then enable the design to grow correctly into the right organs and the right processes. So that's a part of what I've been reflecting on that really shifted my perspective towards like, maybe it isn't wrong to be in multiple circles. Maybe it's actually good, or maybe the Lord's designed it that way at this stage. So anyway, that's another thought that's been in my head thinking about all this.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the design points is that the better we cultivate the right culture, the less mature and healthy an individual has to be to participate. Like right now, it's pretty unstructured and pretty autonomous. The goal is to be resilient enough that whenever anyone shows up, we can, through the spirit, organize around them to help them grow, which frankly is how I see this too, is that this is less about me understanding the reality and helping other people see it, to me bringing my fears, my dreams, my insecurities, and working through this process with you and Jesus so that we all understand ourselves and each other and what he's doing better.
Yeah. Come on. I like it. Well, I also want to make space for Jonathan and Sarah. I know, Sarah, you had the question of, what is this group doing at the June gathering, and what are we cultivating that needs to be brought to that gathering? We could talk about that. What do you, I just would love to get your opinion on, where should we go? What should we talk about? Should we talk about that? Do you have anything on your mind?
I'm just kind of hearing what's going on and what's stirring in people's heads. I don't have any specific thoughts. I'd love to hear, I guess, what the previous meetings have been, or if it's just what was on the agenda and it's you kind of go from there. But just, I don't know, what is each of your visions or why you're here? Maybe that's it. Why are you in the circle? And what did God tell you about it? Or what's your piece?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. Yeah, and that's just me, Steve, and Ernie, just so that there's no confusion at this point, which we're happy to welcome other people, of course. But yeah, the reason that I'm even here is I've been, just having a lot of conversations with people, and I enjoy talking to people about what they're learning, about what they're seeing, about whatever's going on. And um, just realized that's a really key piece of gathering intel from the whole organization is talking to the individuals that are part of it, which seems to be something that I'm somewhat geared to do. Um, as exemplified by my little trip around the country where I saw every single person on this call, um, except maybe Phil. Sorry, Phil. But now we live in the same city, so it's okay. But yeah, so that's a big piece of my piece is just gathering just what people know and what people say. Steve, you want to talk about your amazing biblical foundation stuff?
Sure. Well, I think to answer your question, Sarah, my participation in this started to some degree last summer when I was trying to summarize what I was seeing into a two-page document. And then that two-page document went to the design circle and did about 3 iterations there. And then it went to what was temporarily called a standardization circle that included Phil. And then eventually it spun out and went into what is now being called the cultivation circle. And so that two-page document, I think, includes a foundational component that I think needs to include some representation of apostolic contribution. And so really, I think that that's the piece that I'm most excited about so far, is getting that two-pager nailed down. so that it can be used as a foundational piece, not only in Cultivation Circle, but for the ecosystem. Does that make sense or not really? So I think that's part of the agenda later on, is to do a quick flyover of that two-pager. And that'll help, I think, provide more foundation that's a little more tangible than maybe what we've been doing over the last year and a half.
When
And
did
just
you guys form and how many times have you met?
So we've been meeting since March 31st. So
every
still,
other week for an
yeah,
hour or so.
yeah, every other week with we've had I think we've had two exceptions to that. We've had one meeting where we met for 2 hours that was off rhythm, and then this one would be our second. So still pretty fresh circle.
Because I was on some of those calls early on before the gathering in February, and there was some confusion because I didn't realize I was being invited to a circle or that I was meant to stay, and Joel seemed to think that I had been invited and that I was aware of all that and that I intentionally left. But
Well,
he's kind of scolded me multiple times for something I didn't even realize I was doing or not doing.
well, to be fair, I didn't realize I was leading those groups, so so there's a lot
Hence
of
the need
confusion.
for standardization. Like, is
And
this a meeting? Is anyone leading it? Are people members of it? And so at least we're
I
clear. This is a meeting. Jacob's in charge. You are here as guests. You have the option of becoming members. It is unclear what that will mean.
And to be clear, God is actually in charge. Jacob's a figurehead at best,
facilitator.
facilitator.
I I've been thinking, again, not thinking of this through the language of standardization or cultivation, but I've been thinking about the problem of communication in a decentralized system that's accented by both my confusion about this circle and Ernie's confusion about the June gathering that he just posted in the chat. That because of our non-authority structure, that there is oftentimes a poor flow of information. And I've been thinking about how to solve that problem, which is really a cultivation level problem.
Yeah, and we've had some discussions about that, Phil, since we met with you. And what we kind of arrived at is that we started off with the word standardization, but the more we pressed into it, the more that we realized over the last couple of months that there's really only 3 standards for the entire ecosystem. And everything else is a matter of developing rhythms and cultivating a rhythm within each circle that puts Jesus first and he's the agenda. And so that's why we've been worked on this two-pager, because that those 3 standards are on that. And secondly, everything else is just cultivating a rhythm and helping to encourage other circles to find their own cultivation of rhythm. So that's why we landed on cultivation rather than standardization. Standardizing we can do with three elements and then we're done and we're on to cultivating, and that cultivating is really the brunt of the bulk of what we're doing. So then what does that cultivating look like if it's not standardizing? And it's just sharing a history of experiences in that's relative to that topic.
Yeah.
Makes
So
sense.
And
standardization, this much, cultivation, much more.
right, and since you already teased it, we may as well tell them what those 3 elements are. I think you may have said it, but dwelling with each other, dwelling with God, dwelling within the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can show that on the two-pager when the time is right too.
I also just resent out. I think maybe y'all would have received it somehow, but I just sent it out again just to make sure that it's top of the email. So that's the two-pager that we're talking about.
Yeah, I can share it real quick just so that
Well, actually, I suspect that we do want to I don't think it'll be just quick. I think people will want to actually read it and comment over it. And so I just wanted to take a minute and check in with Jesus and see if this is the time to focus in on the two-pager, or if there's anything else that we need to discuss, or if that's okay as a agenda check with Jesus.
I love it.
Take a minute and also give Jonathan some time to get back.
And we're going to 3.
Top of the hour, yeah. And I'm sure we have time for the close and for any debrief and reflection time. Jacob, I'll pitch to you. What'd you hear or feel?
Yeah, I felt like God was just encouraging us to use the one pager as an example and just that, right? Not to really go through it in super depth right now. It's just not the appropriate time to like really go through and spend 20 minutes on it, but like, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes max. Just, hey, this is like an example of what we do here. This is how we're planning on using it. But really not leave a whole lot of space for questions on this one. That's what I felt. And I'll pitch on over to Phil.
I got a one pager or one page. I don't know if that means like just do the first page of it, but that's what I sense.
Okay.
Pitch it to Steve.
What I got was leave more time for Sarah and Anna. And so I don't know if there's anything that Anna shared with you, Jacob, that she would feel comfortable with you sharing with the group. But Sarah is here, so I think that we need to save some more time for her to share any wisdom and insights that she has or further questions that she may have.
I like it.
Are you pitching to her?
I'll pitch to Sarah.
Okay. I didn't, it was kind of like sure, you could go through it, or people can wait and go through it on their own and come back with questions the next time about it.
Pitch to someone if you're done.
Do you?
What was that? Did Ernie say something?
You missed it. We spent some time reflecting just to see what we should do next in our agenda.
I was in the kitchen. I could hear you the whole time.
All right.
I
All
was
right.
just drinking more tea because I went through all my tea and I can't have not tea.
So did you sense anything about the agenda you want to share?
I felt like he said, "You guys are doing great. Keep it rolling." I felt like we were like a pee-wee baseball team, and Dad's like, "You're doing great, buddy." That was kind of the vibe.
I love it.
Now that's a metaphor.
That was the vibe I got.
All right, you can pitch to Phil.
Phil, I pitch unto thee yet again.
I already had the pitch.
Got to pitch it back to Ernie.
Oh, okay. So
Ernie, I
yeah,
pitch it to you.
yeah. I think the only thing I felt was that I want to stop at the quarter hour to go into our close to leave time to just reflect. So I guess Sarah has the floor with her question then.
Come on.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I got breakfast with Rebecca Walls this morning, which was delightful. And we were talking some about the Dallas DFW system, and I was talking about the broad ecosystem. And the question kind of came up of what type of culture are we creating when we talk about we want to go somewhere and we want it to be family. And I'm like, okay, well, you can go to some families' houses and you ask for something and they immediately get it. And you kind of know like kitchen is kind of off limits. If you need something, you ask for it, but like it's not a super homey. Or sometimes you go into like your favorite grandma's house and you just go in, you get a snack in the cupboard and like you just know you belong. And you can go to people's houses and, you know, second time you're there, this is the type of house I can just go get a snack. I had that feeling at Phil's house this last week of like, yeah, I can just go in and get a cup. This is home. And I was thinking about that with the ecosystem. And then as we were on this call, I was like, oh, I think this is actually something that is part of the cultivation circle of what is the best practices for the culture and what is that's trying to be multiplied, and how does that work across gatherings. When someone comes to the gathering, whether or not it's their first time, their fifth time, there's a culture where you just come in and you're welcomed and you're seen and you're known. And even if you've never been there before, there's none of this like, I came because I know like Dave Drum, but I don't really know anyone else. And everyone else is in like their little pockets talking because they don't see each other very often. And I'm just kind of like, you know, maybe I had a hard day yesterday. I don't know if this group actually cares about me or like their family, but like what type of family are we like interacting with? And so the question of, would this be something that the cultivation circle would kind of jump into of like relationally, what does that mean for when the circles are gathering and when we say family and community, and what is that that's being multiplied? That's my question.
Wow, that's really good. So what I'm hearing you say, Sarah, if I might reflect Jacob and Ernie, is that one area is new meetings. That's a cultivation topic, is new meetings and new people. And what culture do we provide for new meetings with new people? And are we all being situationally aware of new meetings with new people? And are we cultivating that welcoming grandma's kitchen environment to that new person with a new meeting? Is that part of what I'm hearing, Sarah?
Yeah, and that could be a new meeting, as in, you know, this group has their first time meeting, or new as in there's a new person that's joining an already existing meeting. And how are they welcomed into the group and know that this is, you know, grandma's kitchen where they can just be and be known.
I think an important aspect of that is that those people that are a little bit more of a veteran status that have been in the meetings need to realize that that person that is also in the room that's new contributes to the understanding and the knowledge and the wisdom of that group as a whole. And that has to be acknowledged and recognized as an equal part of that meeting to anyone else. And that unless you hear from that person, you haven't captured the full value of what was there from the Holy Spirit.
I definitely think it's a standardization question, and we've actually in the KC design circle, we had 3 of us that were together for 6 months, and then we added someone to the group. And a couple weeks after he was added, he expressed his frustration and his confusion about whether we embodied the values we said we did and who we were and what we were doing. And we realized, we had a good conversation about it, that we were operating with a bunch of history, with a bunch of established friendship and established hearing. Like we had heard the Lord on 40 things. And so when we were sharing those 40 things, it was kind of like, well, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing, and this is, you know, how it's going and where we're headed. And he was like, are we going to ask God about any of that? Or are we going to just do that? Well, how do we get there? And realization was like, he wasn't there to hear God with us, and he wasn't there in the friendship with us. So he didn't understand that. And we were not doing an adequate job of welcoming and creating space for new formation and new relationship and new development. And it brought a fruitful conversation forward, but I don't think what we didn't end up with was clarity on like, yeah, how do you do that? And what is the best way to do that?
Yeah. Like knowing that you're in charge of a meeting that you didn't know existed and all these little implicit pieces of knowledge. And I think I want to actually honor something that happened with us talking about our history was that um, in some ways I feel like an outsider. In some ways, I feel like I'm the only one who knows what's going on, and I flip-flop back and forth between those different modes. Um, and Jacob, was really gracious one or two meetings ago and saying, like, I just want to honor the divergence that you bring to this group. And I think I think we have that language in here somewhere about the tension of divergence and convergence, and that there is this ferment here. And in some ways I like the term pilot, because like, hey, we think we know something, we're sure it's not the right thing, let's invite you in and help us figure this out along with us, and as we figure it out, you can figure out how you want to be involved more. And part of me wants to say, like, I only want to ever do pilots. I want to feel like it's always an experiment that we're running and we have no idea how it's going to go depending on how the spirit and other people show up. um, but so I just wanted to say that, and I will pitch it back. We're getting close on time. Is this a good time for Steve to do his 3 to 5 minute overview of at least one page of the two-pager?
What time for Sarah?
So I have one question, because this is the reason I'm asking this is because part of the conversation I had with Rebecca is about the gathering next month. And she's like, hey, can you help me figure out ways of how do we create that in the gathering? So my head is already thinking of like, okay, what are some aspects of things? But I'd love to do it with other people, and like this seems like this would be the right group with the
Yeah.
cultivation.
At one point, I heard that it was the job of the Cultivation Circle to come up with like a frame or an agenda or some context for the next meeting, which I now learn is June 16th.
Yeah, they have a great frame and good context for like the content, but what they're looking for is how do we create grandma's kitchen? What are simple ways for people to actually get to know each other, and that there's not stragglers who just know one person and don't know like who to interact with. So I'd love brains this, not the rest of this, but like if anyone you're like, hey, yes, would love to go around that again and even just think of what does that actually practically mean of the culture that's trying to be created.
Yeah. Well, and just to add a little bit of like, even from my personal experience, like I feel that and I know all these people, right? Sometimes I'm at a gathering where I'm like, I don't feel like talking, like I don't feel like going and finding someone to talk to, right? I just feel like kind of standing here and having someone come and welcome me, right? If I'm like not feeling good. And that's like a real thing. And, I'm a pretty social guy. Um, so I was talking to Joel about it, and it's like, how do we make a environment that not only connectors flourish in? I think that's the key thing for me, right? Because like we're all people, right? You know, um, but how do we make an environment where someone that's a little socially awkward or introverted doesn't just want to cry, right? And I think the big
So, okay, there.
what Steve said, which is social awareness, right? Situational awareness, right? How do we encourage that? Is I think the core question. I know that's a longer conversation that we probably don't quite have time for today, but we can definitely like I
I mean,
can. What's
I
up?
guess the real question is, do we want to do that for our next? We have a meeting scheduled at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, I guess 10 a.m. Central on Monday, Memorial Day. I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea. It works for me. Do we want to uh, just have Sarah run that meeting and pull information out of us?
I'd be down
You
with
say
that.
11 Central, or what time Central is
10
that?
a.m. Central,
10.
I think.
Yeah,
For this group?
Yeah.
yeah. Sarah's got a meeting
I-
at 11, but we're
That's on Memorial Day?
Memorial Day, Monday. Since this is time sensitive, when we have a slot on Mondays, do we grab it? And if you can join us, Phil, great.
Yeah, I maybe would add a little bit of language that's different that maybe is the same question. And it kind of connects a little bit to the communication question. I think it's the same question of hospitality, but it's specifically around like the idea of ownership. And I think in the past, there's kind of like, oh, there's a boss and he's ensuring that everything's being considered. You could steward would actually fit really well there. Like, is everything being considered? And then there's like, oh, well, it's my job to make sure that this person knows it's their job to do this and to make sure this happens and this. And so in a voluntary system where there isn't authority or jobs, where money and control is being, exerted, the question is, how do we take ownership, if that's the right word, of culture, people, and new opportunities? That's kind of some of what I'm thinking about. And I think it's Sarah's positioning the question around gatherings. I've positioned the question around communication in preparation for those gatherings. I think both unto the end of saying, in the interest of this being spirit led, are we making it confusing and are we making it hard to understand? Like, what is expected of a new person? What can a new person expect? And what is expected of a old person? And what can an old person expect? I think like maybe what works intuitively for Joel, or maybe for connectors, or maybe for pioneers, maybe doesn't work intuitively for everybody.
Phil, do you think it'd be helpful to send this group the invite that you wrote? Because I think that's a good example of an attempt at trying to form some language that would be a good offering.
I'm 7,700 characters too long to paste it in here. I just sent it to Ernie.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I do have a hard stop. I guess I have a soft stop at the top of the hour, but I think several of us have a hard stop. Dave, do you feel like you want to say anything about the two-pager, or shall we, that's relevant or germane to this, or do you want to just go into our close?
I can do it in 1 minute.
Sounds good.
Go for it.
Sarah, I think one thought is, just to close that out, is consider whether you should lead a discussion entitled Grandma's Kitchen. And what does that mean? And how does that apply to that meeting in June?
Yeah.
And then whatever that is, that has the crescendo of welcoming, making sure that those people have their felt needs satisfied that are new. Okay, I will share quick this 1 minute presentation. This is so far, it's a 2-pager. Can everybody see it? Let's see. Am I sharing right now or not?
Yes, we can see you. We were just
Okay.
silent.
Okay, so this is the first page. It's simply just definitions on the first page. And then it ends with a diagram. The second page begins with those things that are standard to the entire ecosystem. And we're terming that determinants. And here are the 3 that Ernie mentioned earlier. We dwell with each other, we dwell with God, we dwell within the kingdom. That is standard for the entire ecosystem. The rest of it is indeterminates and creating a rhythm within every circle where they set their own rhythm that highlights that Christ is the agenda and Christ sets the agenda. And here's a history of some of those experiences that we've had so far over the last few years, even before the ecosystem itself started. And we've got 5 of those listed in chronological order. That's my 1 minute.
Yeah, and real quick, just in 10 seconds. The purpose of that is to be able to hand off to other people, explain, and like, possibly have an experience associated with it, but like let that be a training tool, right? Let that be like, okay, well, hey, here's this one pager that we have. Like this is how we would explain it. You can explain it however you want, but and like have it like be we're coining it as experiences, but it's a training experience, a tool, whatever you want to say. But yeah,
We
Ernie,
tested it with Pia's son at Rebecca's house, and we sent it out and got response from Chuck Proudfit. So far, everything's been pretty positive.
yeah,
It's been highly vetted so
yeah,
far.
yeah. Ernie, do you want to go ahead and walk us through debrief and
No,
communication?
we first we do the ending of the meeting and then whatever time we have left for the debrief. So this is a phrase I learned from a friend. Apparently they do this in he learned this from a Tongan group in InterVarsity. At the end of every meeting, they say, is there anything that needed to be said that wasn't said? And is there anything that needs to be forgiven? And that we ask that not of each other, not just of each other, but also of Jesus. So just to take a moment and reflect, is there anything that I was supposed to say that I didn't say, or that I really wanted to say that I couldn't say? And is there anything that Jesus wanted to say that he hasn't said yet, or we haven't heard him say? And then is there anything we need to forgive? So just take a minute on that, mute when you're done.
Bill, are you done?
Okay, just didn't mute. I'll pitch it to Phil. If there's anything to share. If not, you can pitch it on.
Bill, he said we're good.
And
Pitch it to
you?
someone. Okay.
Pitch it to Jacob.
Okay, Sarah?
I feel like we're good and I didn't get anything. Pitch it to Steve.
I think we need to hear from Anna at the next meeting. We need to hear from her.
I'll do
Can you
my
invite her on Monday if she's
Yeah, I
not
will. I don't
oriented?
think she'll be available, but I will try. She's in Florida right now, or she's traveling to Florida right now.
If you could just get a thought from her based upon her one meeting,
Okay.
I think it's important that we hear and value her. I'll pitch it to Jonathan.
I had something from me and something from the Lord. I thought of a word from the Lord I had gotten when I was with Sarah and Sarah's mom, my mother-in-law Allison, the other day. The word that Phil had gotten earlier from the Lord was, I want you to take note of what's happening to you in your home. And the Lord had me kind of write down this paragraph around the nature of his family and what home means in the context of God's family. And I felt like I was supposed to share, so I appreciate the opportunity. So I felt like the Lord said, in my family, you have a sense of belonging that shapes your identity. And belonging, he made sure to emphasize like belong, like not just be for a long time, but to long to be there for a long time.
Mm.
He said, there's no need for striving. What we do comes from an overflow of who we are. Home is also defined by who we are in the context of family. It's the place or a place where we find safety and security, and it's anywhere that we have been released to belong. And released being meaning he kind of again emphasized the two aspects where we had a lease in a different place that we called home. The Lord is releasing us to where now we have a lease in his home, which is anywhere where we belong. And so to kind of tie that to what Phil got, like, I want you to take note of what's happening to you in your home. Like, I think even the space we have here in this group is a type of home if we've been released to belong and if there's safety and security here, which may vary person to person. But I also think that totally ties to the grandma's house conversation. And what does it look like to cultivate home wherever we go, and to really cultivate safety and security for whoever would be walking into the door, not just the connectors. So that was the piece I wanted to say. And then when I asked Jesus whether he had anything he wanted to say, he said the same thing to me that he said on the front end of the meeting, which was bask in friendship, which I felt like was not just a commission for this time, but something he wanted me, if not all of us, to like take with us as we go out from this time, to just like, I don't know, take that in, whatever that looks like.
All right. Nice. So you're pitching to me, so I'll take that, and that's actually a good word, the basking in friendship, because as I mentioned, I feel like this weird insider outsider, and there's period of times where like I feel something, I don't know if I should say it, and the idea of basking in friendship is like, okay, I'm not saying this as an outsider complaining, I'm not saying this as an insider saying this is what we should do. I'm just, as my friends, I want you to know that this is where I'm at, and I want to confess the fact that I feel this hunger for clarity. Like, think about what Phil was saying about like who's actually responsible for what. Uh, am I responsible for this? Would I be responsible for this? Should I be responsible for this? Is anyone responsible for this? I have all these questions, and I am deeply conflicted about all of them. In the like, oh my God, it would be so cool if all this was clear, and oh my God, if I try to prematurely clarify what God is still mixing up based on my limited understanding, I will screw everything up. And I'm in that mode, and I just want to confess that, and I guess um, either ask forgiveness or offer forgiveness. I'm not even sure, but that's maybe a good segue to communion if no one else has anything else to share.
Ernie, I just want you to know that I am ready for you to share yourself with us without worrying about whether it's right or wrong, or will be understood or misunderstood, or whether or not it's appropriate for the context or the situation. I just want you to know that I want to hear wherever you are, whatever's going on inside of you, you can discern whether or not it's the right moment, because obviously there's some right and wrong moments or whatever. But I'm just, in terms of like, I'm not expecting you to filter and deliver to me what you've decided is right. I'm expecting you to share, like you said, friendship and what you're processing through, and maybe is wrong. That's fine. And so I just want you to know that's my response to what you shared.
Thank you. I received that, and I actually I believe that of all of you is that the hard part is for me to react and share myself and not try to impose something out of fear. And so the one thing that I'm willing to, the one hill I'm willing to die on is the cross of Christ and the cup of Christ, which to me are the same thing. So this is a good segue into God. I just thank you that we come with our brokenness and we leave knowing that we are deeply loved, deeply accepted, and that everything has been forgiven because of your work on the cross. And that is the greatest gift that anyone has ever received. And that is the ultimate gift that we're trying to share through all these complicated phrasing and documents, is to just invite people into that so they can commune with you. Steve, the blood of Christ shed for you.
Phil, the blood of Christ shed for you.
Jacob, the blood of Christ shed for you.
Sarah, the blood of Christ shed for you.
And then the blood of Christ shed for you.
Ernie, the blood of Christ shed for you.
Well, I know we
want
don't
to.
have time for a full debrief, so Ernie, do you just want to do an expedited version of it?
Well, I just want to say, I really appreciated Steve really lowering himself to try to elevate others, especially the newers, especially the women. And I also think that just my acknowledging my conflictedness at the end is my favorite part. Is that like this is a group of people where I can be messed up and they just want me to be present and not worry about everything else. And if that's like to me, that's the heart of the culture. Is that grandma's kitchen. I love that phrase. I'm going to write that down in my glossary as one of these things that is this is it. And I'm glad it's all the best is all out here on the internet for anyone who comes in next to say, like, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. And this is how messed up we are as doing it. And God is still awesome. And that's what friendship is like.
Ernie, I want to say something to you. What you said a second ago as a reflection that I'm seeing in myself and happening in you. And that is when you find friends who are willing to love you and are willing to stick with you and that aren't dysfunctional, it starts to, this has been my experience the past month, it starts to highlight the dysfunction in your own lenses. And you start to realize that the ghosts that you've been seeing in other people, when you get friends that don't have them, you start to realize, oh, that's me. I'm bringing that to this interaction, and these people don't make me feel that way, but I feel that way about myself, or I have that internal dialogue. And that's been a hard realization for me, but it's also nice because then it's like, oh, in the past, it's been a confusion of what's me and what's them and how do I sort through this? And so it's a blessing to be among friends where we can be treated well and loved and given opportunity. And I feel like that's been transformative and sweet and powerful. And it opens up the pathway towards personal growth and reflection.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everyone.
Come on.
Look forward to Monday.
Well, hey, just real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and send out an email for especially Jonathan, Sarah, and Phil. If y'all just like shoot us like a sentence too of the good and the bad, the happy and the crappy, just like let us know. We want to know what your thoughts are. That way we can change things. Any like recommended changes, I'll format it all in the email and stuff. But yeah, really appreciate y'all for coming and hanging out.
Yeah.
Thanks for welcoming us in.
Mm-hmm.
Love you
Bye.
all.